Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning to my dear chairperson. It's Enrico Occhipinti speaking, and I will present ERGOCHECK, a general model for a preliminary risk factor analysis with special focus on biomechanical overload. Recently, in the last years, the World Health Organization asked to develop toolkits for a quick and overall identification of possible risk factors at work. They should be usable from different experts, but also by non-experts users that are not usually involved in occupational health and safety and ergonomics. And to this aim, also ISO developed a special technical report on the question of biomechanical overload. We follow this appeal from the World Health Organization, following ergonomics principle that is globality, simplicity, in this case, a very important question, especially by using special software, and efficient. Efficient in terms of identifying the priorities of analysis, but more or most of all of intervention, but using a real participatory approach that includes the involvement of workers and workers' representatives and also of the company staff in the assessment and management of risk. Following this path, we've proposed this ERGOCHECK that at the conclusion of 10 years of working on it, and the work is not finished, but at the end, in 2019, we published this book that is available for everyone, and the tool will be presented in a special workshop in 25 of September in this conference, and where we will go in more detail than in this synthetic presentation. The structure of the analysis process provides different steps. The first step is the step of key enter. Key enter or key question are simple questions to be answered possibly with the help of the workers, and the answer to these key enters or key questions introduce for certain risk factors, especially for biomechanical overload aspects, the necessity to go to a quick assessment that is a preliminary assessment, in this case made in relation to the provision of the international standard. In fact, we follow the technical report 12295 for applying the quick assessment procedures. And for other aspects, we arranged the questions as key question or quick assessment procedures using relevant suggestion from other standard or relevant literature. One thing is very important is that the ERGOCHECK is compiled for an homogeneous group of workers, where the homogeneous group means a group that performs the same job at task with similar time pattern shift in the same workplace. And the separate ERGOCHECK should be used for each homogeneous group of workers and not for the whole department or the whole company. You can find an Excel spreadsheet software of the ERGOCHECK in this website in English, also in Italian or other languages, but essentially in English, and you can free download it for checking the ERGOCHECK. To illustrate the ergo check, we will follow an example that came from the Italian Alps, where the workers work large stone, siliceous stone that have the particularity of being they could be sliced very thin, and those thin are used as a quality roofing shingles for the building. The workers perform substantially three tasks: lifting and carrying the very big pieces of stone into the workplace that they call laboratory. They first cut the big stones in 3-4 pieces of 10, 15 kilograms each, and then cut the small slices in a very peculiar way, and this is their ability, recovering the roofing shingles, and they weigh 3 kilograms about each. So come to go to the sheets. The first sheet includes the anaglyphic data, the company data, and the task considered, the homogeneous group number of representative, and also as a description of the duration of the sheet of the different tasks, main task or ancillary tasks that are performed during the shift, and the presence and sequence during the day of breaks. That's very important for modulating the final result. So we can go to the key enters for biomechanical overload that are taken from ISO TR and from a new version of the ISO 11228 part 1 of the that was updated in 2021. The questions are very simple. You can answer yes or no. For instance, for manual lifting, you should consider a yes when there is the presence of loads weighing more than 3 kilograms that should be manually lifted or eventually carried. The answer yes implies you go to the quick assessment shift, but the sheet we will see afterward. Then we consider biomechanical overload from awkward postures, essentially with the same concept from the ISO technical report, but we simplified and considered substantially the trunk and the lower limbs, where again, a yes answer means that you should consider this peculiar question, awkward posture of the trunk of the upper limbs or the lower limbs in a separate sheet. For all the other occupational risk factors, we use not key answers, yes or not, or better questions. Key questions that are posed to the group of workers or observed directly by the observer, and that implies a depicting condition that could be very good, the best that you can imagine, or very bad, the worst that you can imagine for each condition, for each problem. For instance, for lighting, consider general lighting, the condition could be sufficient, the general lighting, or the condition is worse when you need general light, artificial light, but you don't have it. That's the worst condition. And so a semaphoric system, green, yellow, red, purple, or color system, gives you the priority or the relevance of this problem according to how the question have been answered by the group or by the observer. The same happens for UV radiation. The same happens for noise that could is not measured, of course, otherwise it's the full evaluation. But is referred to the perception of noise that have the workers and how much it interferes with communication with the colleagues. Then we go to microclimate problems, for instance, hot or cold in all the year or in some periods of the year, exposed to external climate conditions, or vibration, both hand-arm vibration or whole body vibration provoked by trucks, tractors, or similar. We consider also the health effects in the use of equipment and of machinery. In this case, there is only equipment, and the equipment could be noisy, could be answering for a lot of force, could be obsolete or inadequate, like in this case. And then we consider key questions again for pollutants, chemical or physical, biological pollutants, and we note if we want to also consider work-related stress. That is an important part of this ergo check. We cannot see it in detail now, but you can decide to complete or not complete these four. Then we can move to quick assessment. And quick assessment consider, as I told you, different aspects of biomechanical overload. And for the different aspects, the outcome are two. Acceptable are three substantial. Acceptable, critical, they are in the extreme part, and could be intermediate, neither critical nor acceptable. And in this case, the technical report asked to use traditional risk assessment methods that are listed in the standard or in the relevant literature. But you will see that we arranged something also for considering intermediate conditions that are not critical and not acceptable, just to have a preliminary evaluation or analysis of the level of exposure. For all the factors that are subjected to a quick assessment procedure, we derive the criteria from relevant literature. And go in detail, the first quick assessment sheet regards repetitive movements, and you can go to this sheet of the software, where is translated, transported, incorporated what we have described in the first page regarding the organization of the shift and the breaks, etc. Then we can go to the questions for depicting an acceptable condition. And the acceptable condition is when you answer yes to all the questions that are posed. There are 4 or 5 questions regarding frequency, regarding posture, regarding use of force, regarding the brakes. And if all the answers are yes, you are in an acceptable condition, also consider the international standard on it. On the other side, you have a list of critical conditions, again regarding frequency, force, posture, and brakes and shift duration. And if you have only a yes answer, the condition is critical. If you have all the answer in the no band, you are not in a critical condition. This is according to the standard. But if you are in an intermediate condition, not critical but not acceptable, you may use the last part of the sheet to depict some aspects about frequency, pace, awkward posture, lack of variation, and use of force. Derived from the Okra checklist that can give you a rough idea of how important is the level of exposure in this intermediate condition. At the end of the sheet, you have a summary of what your evaluation has been. The third sheet regards a quick assessment of manual handling of loads in different aspects. And first of all, we decide to describe describe for lifting and carrying the amount of loads that have been lifted or carried during the shift with their percentages and their how to say load category because this is useful for other consideration. Then we move to what is the technical report or the ISO 11228 part 1 says, considering, first of all, other additional organizational and environmental risk factors that could be for environment, from the object characteristic, or from some aspect of work organization that could modulate in some way the quick assessment. And then go to the quick assessment in itself, looking at the critical condition for manual lifting. And the critical condition are, first of all, those that are considered not allowed by the NIOSH revised NIOSH lifting equation, or if the limits of load are exceeded, the limits of load recommended by the standard. If only one of those the condition is answered yes, the condition is critical. On the other side, the condition could be acceptable if the weights lifted are less or maximum 10 kilograms and they are lifted in good conditions, geometry and frequency. But if you are in a condition intermediate, you should consider also what happens for the loads between 10 and 25 kilograms, the geometry, the frequency, and this will give you an idea of how irrelevant is the exposure to manual lifting. Manual carrying was recently readapted according to the new ISO 11228 part 1. There is a sheet for the acceptable condition. There is a sheet for critical condition that is critical, especially when the cumulative mass per day is exceeded, or if you carry for more than 20 meters in ordinary way. But we prefer also use some a little bit of sophistication describing the object to be carried, the weight of the object, and some other characteristics, the distance of carrying, the hand weight during carrying, other unfavorable factors, as the standard makes, just to have a more complete evaluation of the carrying condition. Then there is pushing and pulling, And again, the first thing for pushing and pulling is to collect by the Bohr scale, category ratio 10 or other visual analogic scales, the level of effort perceived by the work. Considering the Bohr scale, we assign the level that is judged during the pushing and pulling action by the workers. Considering that up to value of 2, the condition could be acceptable. After the if the condition is more than 8, the condition is critical. And in the between 3 and 7, we can modulate the level of exposure. Then we can go to what the technical report says. Again, we have to consider additional and organizational factors as a contributing factor, and then look at the acceptable condition or critical condition, the first of which is the question of the perceived effort by the Bohr scale. Then there are other questions regarding the duration of the task, but most of all, the position of the end when pushing and pulling outside the level of the shoulder, etc., that can be considered completely safe or absolutely critical. At the end of the page of manual handling, you have a summary of your evaluation regarding lifting, carrying, pushing and pulling, and additional factors. The next is to consider awkward posture, and we skip exactly the technical report doesn't speak about that, and we skip the difficulty use of the standard, but interpret the standard, especially considering the trunk and the lower limb. And for the trunk, and then for the separately for the lower limb, we look at the posture of the trunk or the back, both in standing or seated posture, and describe roughly how much time is spent in different condition of the back, always upright, moderate flexion, measure flexion, and give a percentage that should cover 100% of the working time. The same happens for the lower limb posture, again in standing or sitting posture, and then we consider also the acting on pedals that is relatively infrequent anyway. The quick assessment procedure in the ERGOCHECK regards also the chemical and the other pollutants, the biological pollutants, and the work-related stress. This part is large enough, and I have to skip this from this presentation because of time. And I can go directly to the synthesis, the page of synthesis and final result that are showed in a graphic way, showing histograms which height depicts how much relevant the problem is. In this case, obviously, repetitive movement, lifting and carrying, more or less push and pull, a little bit less working posture, and the other factors are in this peculiar homogeneous group and working context, obviously. And so you can have a map of priorities for this peculiar condition. The same page gives the same result in non-graphic and descriptive way, separately for the the aspects of biomechanical overload and the other risk factors that have been considered, and some of them have been skipped in this presentation. So we can go to the final remarks, remembering that the toolkit has been conceived under the input of the WHO, especially for craft work, small medium enterprises, agriculture, building, and it represents a simplified procedure for risk assessment. It can be used also by medium-large enterprises for a preliminary check of the condition of the different workplaces, obviously followed by a more detailed analysis. What is important is to follow a participatory approach that is the only one that could give you effective results in compiling the ergo check, and not based only on the observer impression in some kind. The users are many. The employer, the responsible of health and safety at work, the workers' representative, the occupational doctor, and in our experience also the labor inspectors, provided that they have a minimum training in the use of the ergo check. And from our side, that's all. You can download the ERGOCHECK from the website of our APM International School. And I want to warn you that in a near future, by the Samsung Brazil, we will have an app for smartphone just to use the ERGOCHECK. And if you want to know much more about this, come to the workshop or come to our stand at this conference. Thank you very much.